And we are live back in Fort Myers, Florida, reporting on the aftermath of Hurricane Ian. I want to quickly go to my colleague, Nadia Romero, who is also covering the aftermath. She is with Florida Governor Ron DeSantis right now, talking to him about the response here to the hurricane. Let's go to her now.
From Lee County, why do you stand behind Lee County's decision to not have that mandatory evacuation until the day before the storm?
Well, where was your industry station when the storm hit? Were you guys in Lee County? No, you were in Tampa. So that's, they were following the weather track, and they had to make decisions based on that. But, 72 hours, they weren't even in the cone. 48 hours, they were on the periphery. So you got to make the decisions the best you can. I will say, they delivered the message to people. They had shelters open. Everybody had adequate opportunity to at least get to a shelter within the county. But, a lot of the residents did not want to do that. I think probably for various reasons. Some people just don't want to leave their home, period. They're island people, whatever. But I think part of it was so much attention was paid to Tampa that I think a lot of them probably thought that they wouldn't get the worst of it. So, but they did. And I think it's easy to second guess them, but they were ready for the whole time and made that call when it was justifiable to do so.
Some of their neighboring counties, though, did have mandatory evacuations before Tuesday.
Well, right. But our neighboring, if you look at Tuesday morning, they had moved the track down. Models started showing it going to Sarasota, so that's that. So they did that. I was in Sarasota that day with them when they were expanding some of their evacuations. Charlotte, I think, did the same thing either Monday night or Tuesday morning. But don't forget Sunday, 11 a.m. advisory, it was going to go to Taylor County in North Florida. And so, at some point you got to look to see kind of where this thing is going. So, I think that it's easy to say in hindsight. We had most of our supplies stationed in the Tampa Bay area. As that track moved, we shifted our response further south as well. Now, we said there would be impacts for sure, and even when it was going to hit North Florida, it's such a big storm, there was going to be impacts in southwest Florida as well. But the difference between impacts and having the eye go there is much different. And for most of Sunday, Monday, and even into Tuesday, it was 150 miles away from them.
Is that one of the things you'll be reviewing once we get out of the aftermath, people get their power back on, looking at those evacuation orders? Because even Lee County, if they would have followed their own evacuation orders from what we reviewed, they should have had that mandatory evacuation order sooner.
Well, but, the issue, though, is also that there were a lot of, they informed people, and most people did not want to do it. That's just the reality. So, you're in a situation, are you going to grab someone out of their home that doesn't want to? I don't think that's the appropriate use of government. I think that takes it a little too far.
And we heard from the FEMA administrator today as well, who says that anyone, whether you're in Florida or anywhere else, you live near water, that you should have flood insurance. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that what happens with homeowners is they'll say you're in a floodplain, you want a mortgage, you have to get flood insurance, so they do. But what they will say, if you're not in a floodplain, so people say, hey, I don't need it. The reality is, particularly in Florida, it's a pretty good idea to get it. Fortunately, usually it's pretty affordable. I think that'll be something that people see, because you're going to have people who had total losses who would have bought insurance if they were told they were at risk. But now you're in a situation where you're seeing floods like nobody's ever seen before, and that's just something people will, I think, internalize and then want to do something about.
There have been some criticisms about those skyrocketing premiums during your term as governor. What more could you have done, or the Florida legislature, to keep that affordable for Floridians?
Well, the flood insurance is a federal program, so that's not ours. That's a separate program. Most of the claims for this are going to be under the National Flood Insurance Program. The homeowners insurance are wind claims. And the reason why that market's is for two reasons. One, 15 years ago, they drove all the insurers out, all the big ones out. And then more recently with Irma and some of those other storms, you had massive litigation and a lot of scams. So we've dialed back some of that. We provided a fund to stabilize. A lot of them would have gone out of business this summer already. But you need to get rid of the scams and the litigation. And I'm willing to do that. The legislature has not been willing to do that thus far, but I'm confident after the election they will.
Governor, what is the talk at the state level of taking into account global warming, climate change as we rebuild these areas, as we see sea level rise? Are we having those talks at this level right now?
Well, I think if if you guys, I don't know if you're based in Florida, but I mean, I created a program called Resilient Florida that we put $1 billion into over the last 2 years, and local communities are able to get money that's matched by the state to be able to make improvements and harden some of their infrastructure. I mean, I think if you look at Southwest Florida, I think it's probably going to be shown that some of what they did has worked because I think that the damage could have been much more extensive in some of their underlying infrastructure. So I think we're the only state that's ever done that, and that's made a big difference. I mean, it's made a big difference that that's available. I mean, it's a 2-year-old program, so they haven't completed it, but that's a lot of money to be putting in the system.
Governor, we expect to see the death toll rise now, and there are a lot of people who can't still get in contact with their loved ones, especially those who are in some of the barrier islands. What's your message to people as we see that number go up and up each day?
Well, look, I mean, I think, this is basically a Category 5 storm that also had flooding like we've never seen. I mean, if you look at Hurricane Michael, it was like a tornado that went through Northwest Florida, very damaging. But you were in Panama City, you could potentially have lost everything. If you were in Panama City Beach, you pretty much had nothing because it was relatively focused. This storm, you had that in places like Fort Myers Beach, which packed a big punch, but you also had this massive event that's caused flooding throughout the state. And so it's just a massive impact. And, unfortunately, you have destruction of homes, you have fatalities, and it's a difficult thing to deal with, for sure.
Your message, though, to those people who can't get in contact with their loved ones who are reeling right now on day 4.
So what we've done, we're bringing to here, we brought them to Southwest Florida and other parts. We're bringing the Elon Musk satellite receivers, and so people will be able to get online at these pods to be able to let people know that they're okay. Obviously, the telecom companies are doing what they can. I know they bring in towers and stuff like that. Some of them suffered extensive damages, but I think on the internet, to be able to come here, get what you need, you will be able to, if we bring to the pods, you will be able to log on. So that'll be comfort for a lot of people.
How would you describe your relationship with the Biden administration?
As a state, what can we do together to get this thing moving forward?
Well, look, I don't think you've ever seen a state spring into action like we've seen here. If you look at these pods, usually the pods are not set up until 96 hours after the storm leaves. We had pods set up Saturday when the storm left on Thursday night. We had a lot of stuff pre-staged, and then you've had all these private groups that are coming in to help. You have all these other agencies throughout the state coming in to help. A lot of these agencies, like Southwest Florida, they were all preparing to go help Tampa and St. Pete a week ago when this stuff on Monday, they were making preparations to actually do that. Well, things change, and so now you have people from like Tampa, you have people from the Panhandle coming down to this part of Florida, and so I think people have really pulled together. I think that they've done a really good job. I mean, there's a lot of work ahead, obviously, but I think the resilience has been great. Friday morning in Cape Coral, which is very close to ground zero where the hurricane hit, you had Publix open, Wawa open. I mean, things are springing back. I doubt you would have seen that in some of these other major storms that we've seen over the past 20, 30 years in this country. And so I think the spirit is great, and I do think people have pulled together well. All right, we're going to head back over
Yep. And that was my colleague, Nadia Romero, speaking with Governor Ron DeSantis there, asking him questions about the response to Hurricane Ian. I don't know if Nadia is still with me. Nadia, if you're there, I just want to ask you,
yes.
What were your thoughts as you heard there from the governor? Obviously, he sounds like he is very supportive of the decisions that were made in terms of when these evacuation orders were issued that residents are frankly asking a lot of questions about.
Yeah, and he seemed frustrated when I started asking him questions about Lee County and their mandatory evacuation. You can see the governor now. I want you to take a look as he loads up on a boat here and heads to the other side of Highway 70. That's where he's going to have another press conference. He really came on this side to shake the hands of some National Guards members and some people here who've been stranded because of the floodwaters. But when I asked him about Lee County not having that mandatory evacuation until the day before the storm, he fired back and said, well, where do did you think the storm was going to land? And that cone, the eye of the storm, was not set towards Fort Myers and Lee County until later on. And so he doubled down again, saying that he stands by what happened in Lee County and saying that hindsight is 20/20, and we can all look at it now and say what should have been done. But he says that he believes they did what they thought was best based on the track of the storm. Now, we know from reviewing the documents that Lee County's own records show that they should have that mandatory evacuation order. They could have had that as soon as Sunday. So when I asked the governor about that, he doubled down again and said they did the best that they could and that he felt like their evacuation order was put in a timely manner. That is not what we're hearing from others who are criticizing Lee County. I followed up and asked him, well, the surrounding counties around Lee County did have mandatory evacuation orders before Tuesday. And the governor said, listen, everyone did the best that they could. The bigger issue here is that people in Florida did not heed those mandatory evacuations. Even when people were told, you need to leave, the storm is coming, they didn't leave. And he said that he didn't want to see the government removing people from their homes. And so this is simply what happened in this particular case.